I think the big story probably for foliar disease is how it as kind of a category has changed. When I started my career 30 years ago, we had one major disease, that was gray leaf spot. And today we have gray leaf spot, northern cornleaf blight, tar spot, southern rust. So we have kind of this broad spectrum of diseases.
Hi, and welcome to Illinois Corn TV. I'm Lindsay Croke, the Director of Communications and Marketing for Illinois Corn, and today I'm talking with Matt Montgomery. He's the Agronomy Education Lead at Beck's Hybrids. Welcome, Matt.
Hey, thank you for having me.
We're going to jump right into some really important questions today. First, I would love to know, what are Beck's current recommendations when it comes to managing tar spot? Tar spot has been a really big problem in Illinois, and I know our farmers are desperate to hear your expertise.
Yeah, I think fungicides are an important tool in trying to manage that disease, but I think ultimately everybody would say you want to set the foundation as a good choice of hybrid, because we have varying degrees of tolerance to tar spot. And so I think it starts there, and then you use fungicide as the next layer of protection to further reduce your risk.
Are there other practices that you, Beck's, has seen are making a difference?
Honestly, I think that's the biggest one. I think there's always the argument that you want to reduce stress on the plant. So making sure we have adequate fertility and all those kind of things, because a weakened plant becomes a little bit more susceptible to diseases like that. But it really does begin with that choice of hybrid and then that application of fungicide. And I think there's a little bit of a question about fungicide timing on the table, the possibility that if that disease does decide to be the major player in a region, that we may be looking at slightly later applications of fungicide than what we have up to this point.
How have foliar diseases evolved over the past few decades? And what are some new challenges that are facing our farmers that maybe past generations didn't need to be concerned with?
Yeah, I think the evolved question is a difficult one. You know, sometimes the research is a little hard to get a feel if a disease has developed resistance to different tolerance or different genes that we have in a plant. I think the big story probably for foliar disease is how it as kind of a category has changed. When I started my career 30 years ago, we had one major disease, that was gray leaf spot. And today we have gray leaf spot, northern cornleaf blight, tar spot, southern rust. So we have kind of this broad spectrum of diseases that, like all sorts of different parts of the temperature spectrum, like a little bit different environmental conditions. And that means our risk of foliar disease is elevated more than it once was, and much more a function of new diseases, or maybe diseases that weren't once so common, gaining a foothold in the state of Illinois.
Illinois is a unique state, and it's not so different from some other states, but we're just so different from north to south because we're a little longer than some states. And so farmers are dealing with a lot of different challenges, even though, all of their ground is in the same state. So I find that really interesting, and something that experts, I'm thinking policy experts, don't really think about whenever they're developing policy or regulatory environments for farmers.
Yeah, just a really broad geography, a lot of different environments. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So how has the industry's approach to identifying and managing these diseases changed? Either scouting or fungicides, or I don't know, all the different ways that we can manage these diseases.
Yeah, I think one of the changes that has kind of happened is that, again, 30 years ago, we were probably really intense on the scout and spray. And I think because of kind of the exponential nature of disease development, we've begun to appreciate sometimes you go out and scout and you actually miss the event that's developing. It actually develops after that scouting tour. And so I think one of the changes, and you can make arguments that's a little bit unfortunate, is that maybe we feel a little bit more that scouting isn't necessarily the best way to get out ahead of that problem. And so I think we've shifted into a much more kind of proactive approach to disease management. But one of the more interesting recent developments would be modeling. And I think that's ultimately what we're going to have to do in the industry, is have really solid models that give us an indication of our level of risk and then help us make those decisions ahead of time, whether we need to invest in that or not. Scouting hasn't quite been as useful a tool for some of these foliar corn diseases, and I think modeling is going to be the really important one.
So we've talked a little bit about corn hybrids, perhaps being better positioned to manage some of the disease pressures. Do you think that the fungicides have also evolved as quickly as the hybrids in helping us manage?
Yeah, I think one of the positive things that's happened in the fungicide arena is that, again, if you think back maybe 20 years ago, when fungicides really began to kick into gear in corn production, we relied upon single mode of action products, and there was huge risk associated with that we might, for instance, with a group of fungicides called the strobies, we might wind up developing resistance to those if we kept kind of exposing those to pathogens left and right. One of the really positive things is that now we do much more combo product applications. So we do more than one mode of action family. And that's really important because resistance management is a really big deal in agriculture right now. Trying to keep as many tools in the toolbox is one of the big battles that we face in the 21st century here when it comes to row crop production.
So just to summarize, if I'm a farmer, my plants are emerging. I know Southern Illinois is still trying to get some things in the ground, but what's the one thing that I need to know that I don't know to manage my risk this year?
I think if we're talking about foliar disease risk, those decisions, and keep this in mind for the season to come, are really going to be largely based upon, hey, do I have a hybrid that can kind of tolerate that disease a little bit better? And that means probably one of the things to do going into the 26 season as we're rolling into 25 and through 25 here is kind of get a feel for what the big players are disease-wise. Is it gray? Is it northern? Is it southern? Or is it tar? And start building your program towards that major player and consider that hybrid resistance or tolerance to that disease that tends to be the big player on the farm.
We are now going to move into our dad joke portion. Are you ready to be a little bit corny with me, Matt?
Oh, wow. Okay. Yes.
Here's the joke. Why did the corn throw a party after the agronomy update?
Why did the corn throw a party after the agronomy update? I do not know. Why?
Because good info means bad rot doesn't stand a chance. Told you, it's a dad joke.
There you go.
We're really digging deep here.
So do I have to have a dad joke as well? Is that part of the deal?
I mean, you can offer one if you have one. Go for it.
Yeah, so the two hydrogen atoms were walking down the road. One lost an electron and said to the other, I think I lost the electron. And said, are you sure? And he said, I'm positive. Dum-dum. That's a really bad one.
That's a good one. Thanks so much for joining us today. I've had a great time chatting with you. Thank you so much for supporting Illinois corn farmers.
Thank you.